Hey guys, David. This is Express Auto Transmission. We like to play with transmissions here, and we like having you guys here watching our videos. So thank you guys for watching. Welcome back. We're gonna go see what's on the bench today.
This is the 456 hub. This is the shaft.
The idea behind that is to get as much oil to the fourth clutch as quick as you possibly can. And we've got a beautiful vacuum. I'm back, just in time. Sorry, I'm late. Forgive me, guys.
Don't
Been
do it
a little
again.
bit. What?
Don't do it again.
Sorry, man. Boss doesn't pay me enough to be here on time, so here we are. All right, guys, we made it back to the bench. All this stuff behind me, this is an Allison LCT 1000. This transmission came to us with a C2 clutch failure, a electrical problem, and somebody else's headache. This unit actually came from 3 different transmission shops, and well, it's not that nobody didn't know what they were doing, it's just they just kind of sucked at what they were doing, so it ended up here. Anywho, we are going to show you how our final assembly goes. We have already assembled this transmission once previously, and this is something that I do on a daily basis. I assemble everything multiple times, and the reason for that is sometimes you forget to do stuff, or sometimes you don't measure stuff, or sometimes you have to measure stuff, so on and so forth. But we're going to focus on how we assemble the Allison LCT 1000. This is a 03 model transmission. All of the parts that we are using today came from Transtar. We are using genuine Allison components. We are upgrading the C2 clutch to a Alto Power Pack clutch. The frictions that we are using are a Raybestos green. I prefer to use those in the mild horsepower applications. They work really well, had really good luck with them. So we are going to get started on this thing and just kind of work our way from the bottom to the top, to the bottom, to the top, and back and forth, and so on and so forth. We are going to start with the C3 piston. C3 piston has a hole here at the top of it. That little balance hole needs to be at the 12 o'clock position. So we've got this transmission facing bell housing up, tail housing down, and that is a C3 piston. On top of the C3 piston are some clutches. We're gonna move this out. We have a bottom plate steel that has springs on it. Instead of having a cushion spring on the clutch itself, this uses a spring and wafer system. We're gonna stack this guy up. Get our top pressure plate in, and we are going to put our top snap ring in. I like to use my favorite Stanley screwdriver and just kind of work your way around in a circle here. All right, now that we've got our clutches in there, we're gonna flip it over. The reason we are going to flip it over is because an Allison gets built backwards. We are going to take our failure gauges, which somebody put up earlier, dingus. Gonna get our failure gauges out here. I am going to go over the clutches in just a second. Clutch clearance. So the factory spec on an Allison says that the clutch clearance needs to be between, I think it's 40 and 60 thousandths, if my memory's right. I'd get the book out and look, but it's 40 to 60 thousandths on your C3, C4 clutches. Your C5 clutch needs to be between, I think it's 110 to 140. Let me double check that. We'll see what the book says about this. The C5 clutch clearance is supposed to be 90 to 110. I can never remember that one for some reason. I don't set mine up that way. I like to set my clutches a little tighter. On my C3 and C4, I will set them at the minimum, try to get them as close to the 40 as possible. If I can get 35 to 37, I'm really happy with it. Same thing goes with the C4. The C5, I actually stack mine on the loose side. I try to keep mine around 110 to 115. A lot of how an Allison operates is based off of clutch clearance and off of computer strategy. So If you can work with values that the computer is capable of understanding, your transmission is going to shift really nice. So we're going to check our clearance here. Down in between the steel and the top plate. And we can just almost get our 40 in there. So 38 thousandths is what we're shooting for. That's what we've got. Starting on the C4 clutch, we're going to put our piston in with the balance hole on top. Push the piston down. Get our bottom plate. Put our springs on our bottom plate. Piston return springs are very important on an Allison. Got to make sure you use those guys. Getting ahead of myself. Before the C4 clutch goes in, we're going to put the ring gear in to the C3 clutches. Make sure it's all the way down. Now, we'll put some clutches in. Same as earlier, we're gonna go clutch steel, clutch steel. On top, we are going to put a pressure plate. On top of the pressure plate, we are going to put a snap ring. And then we're going to put another snap ring. All right. Now we're going to do the same thing as we did before. Going to check the clutch clearance. And we've got a nice drag at 40 thousandths. Now that we have our C4 clutch in, we are going to put our planetary in. So it's seated all the way down. We already have our new thrust bearing installed. Next, we are going to put in the C5 clutches. C5 clutches end on a steel plate. Now, if we've got everything set in there correctly, we can measure off of the back of the C5 clutch to the front of the C5 apply piston and see what our clearance is. So, we are going to get our rear cover, grab our piston. Notice that there's an alignment tab on the piston. This alignment tab goes down into this hole right here on the rear cover. We've already installed our new bearing and installed our new bearing on the back of it. These two bearings are super important. I have seen in the past where this snap ring has popped out and this bearing is allowed to drift. If that occurs, you'll have a really fun reverse problem that nobody can seem to figure out. So if you get a reverse that's delaying and then banging, good area to start looking. So we're going to align the alignment tab from here into the pocket. Make sure that it's lined right. Get in there. And push it down, just like so. Then time to get the measuring tools out. We are going to measure from one side to the other side with our H gauge and measure down to the surface of the piston. With the pin all the way flat, we're going to put this on the back of our transmission like so, and we can check the amount of clearance we have right here. Guys will notice that our clearance is really, really tight. So either A, we've got something stacked up wrong, or B, our piston's not down. Our piston did not actually go all the way to the resting position. So we'll recheck, get the piston set all the way down, and do this again. And there we have it. I've measured that multiple times. That is exactly 110 thousandths. Now, we are going to pull our C5 clutches back out. We are going to put in our rear planet, or mid planet, sorry. I always want to say rear planet. It's a mid planet. We're going to put in our new Koyo bearing, mid shaft. Here's where it gets a little fun. We're going to use a bar sat across the flats of the PTO cover from one side to the other, like so. And then we're going to set our planetary, or our sun gear and mid shaft down onto the bar. With that in place, we're going to put our spacer on. We're going to put our rear sun gear on. You'll notice that the rear sun gear has a pocket right here. This pocket has to face up. The reason it faces up is it goes into a bearing on the output shaft. I have seen guys put this in upside down. If you put this in upside down, you will have no end play in the transmission and it will grenade the planetary. Make sure that it is facing with the shoulder up. We're going to put our rear bearing in place, output shaft, and then we're going to put our clutches back down. Same thing as earlier, clutch and steer. Going to put our reverse piston return spring on there. Going to put our output planetary on. Like so. Going to put the rear collar. Last but not least is the bearing shim. Now we can assemble the parking section. Going to put our park rod guide into place here. If I can put it in there right. Sorry about that, had a little bit of water on there. I don't want that. Going to hook our parking pawl return spring in. Put the return pin in. The pivot pin, like so, and then we are ready for the rear cover gasket. We're going to take 4 bolts, I get my hand to work right tonight. Back that side off a little bit. Yeah, I don't like it. We're gonna take it back apart. One part of the adventure sometimes, guys, if you assemble something and you're not comfortable with the way it feels or something just doesn't feel right, stop and back up. It is never a bad idea to clear your conscience now rather than later. I've spent many a nights laying in bed thinking about the transmission I spent all day building. These videos may be short and quick, but this is an all-day process to get this thing set up the way it needs to be. And if you've got any doubt, it'll eat you. So we're gonna pop the cover back off here and see what's binding up. Come here. There she goes. All right. There is a problem. Our rod fell off of the shaft and allowed the shaft to drop. Remember, if it doesn't feel right, take it back apart. That would have just cost us a lot of headaches later on. Now we can put this back together. There we go. Okay. That feels better. That's much better. All right, we've got our rear cover down. We do not want to rotate the output shaft because it will cause our intermediate shaft to fall off of the block that we are using to keep the intermediate shaft in place. We're going to pull our pin, rotate the transmission over, and start putting the top together. All right, so let's take this stuff apart and show you guys what we've got inside here. This is our C1 and C2 clutch housing, also known as the input drum. We're going to pull our top snap ring out. C2 clutch hub out. C1 clutch hub out. This is the C2 clutch. This is actually the clutch that had failed inside of this transmission originally. This is a Alto power pack. One of the biggest reasons I like using this kit, part of what causes the C2 clutch problems is that the bottom plate is not very thick. The factory bottom plate is nothing more than a steel. So whenever we rebuild one, whether it's a stock rebuild or a power build or anything, this is something that I insist on. If you guys are going to be building one, knowing how the clutch applies and how the piston affects the base plate or the bottom pressure plate or whatever you want to call it is very, very critical to the life of the transmission. If you are working on one that is applying towards the inside edge, you're going to have a bottom plate that cones, which actually causes the clutches to cone as well. When the clutches start to cone, you only actually use the inside lining of the clutch surface. So if you are building one and you want it to actually live, this applying flat is very, very important. Gonna set that to the side. Inside of here, we also have our C1 clutch. C1 clutch is retained by this top snap ring, and it has an inside snap ring. All of these clutches are Raybestos greens, and they work really well for us. So now that we have all of this assembled, we're going to put this back together, stick this in there, and put the pump together. We have our new Torrington bearing glued to the front. We're going to set this guy down inside of there. Alrighty, input drum is in, and we are ready to start putting other pieces in. We are going to start with our channel plate gasket. This is our channel plate, stator support, and pump body. This pump body has a very, very healthy stator. We've actually went through and retorqued all of our we've torqued all of our bolts, verified our boost valve, and verified that all of the timing valves are operating the way that they need to. And we've assembled the pump body with the pump gears to the stator housing. So the reason that we do it this way is to actually ease in assembly of the transmission itself. We're going to put a liberal amount of goo on our O-ring here. We've got our gasket already on here. Now we can take our stator tube, sit it on like so. Make sure everything's nice and flat. Grab our next gasket here, put it on like so. And we are going to grab our bell housing And we're gonna slide it right on the top. Drop down, turd. There we go. One of the last things that we're going to talk about this evening is putting the pump bolts in. This is something that I've had several discussions with several different guys about. I silicone my pump bolts on an Allison. Some guys say that I'm an idiot for doing that, and that's fine. They suck. I don't care. The way I do it is the way that I was taught. The O-rings have problems on Allison pumps. It's been an issue since day one. There's been many fixes. Guys have put green O-rings, black O-rings, purple O-rings until their hair falls out. That's not the problem. The problem is that the heat and the distortion of the aluminum and the type of washer that they are using to seal it is not adequate. I silicone them. That's my way of doing it, and it works well for me. If you guys want to try that way, try it. See what you think. Outside of that, this transmission is assembled as far as the main unit is concerned. We're going to take it back apart, finish doing some stuff, make sure all of our end clearance is exactly what we want it to be. Then we're going to lay it on its back and start doing some valve body work. So we'll be back with you guys with some more videos soon, and see you guys on the next one.